Like Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and the Rockefellers, he amassed billions through ruthless business decisions, only to turn around and give away most of his fortune to advance his own personal philosophy.
I am basically there to make money. I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do.
Do you believe in God?
No.
This is not the first time that Mr. Soros has been implicated in a plot to destroy a nation. His cover organizations have been banned from several countries for doing exactly what they're currently doing to America. The Philippines, Russia, Turkey, Poland, Pakistan, as well as Soros' own homeland of Hungary, have learned the hard way the true intentions of this ruthless multi-billionaire.
És egy percig sincsen kétségem afelől, hogy Soros György és a vele együttműködők mindent megtesznek, minden alkalmat megragadnak, hogy azokat a kormányokat, amelyek...
The growing emergency unfolding at the southern border.
Thousands of Central American migrants are vowing to continue their march to the U.S. border.
The number of migrants has surged in recent weeks, alarming officials who are strapped for resources.
And overwhelmingly elected with George Soros' money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this.
I was going to say you get the last word, Speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars he spent?
I agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
Okay. So it's verboten.
All right. We're going to... Okay, we're going to move on.
It was in 2006 when Soros said the main obstacle to a stable and just world is the United States. Translated into truth, that sentence would read, the main obstacle to destabilizing the world is the United States. While Soros is often accused of unfounded conspiracies, that should not detour from the heinous crimes against humanity that he's actually guilty of. Many of those crimes he keeps hidden in plain sight. According to a white paper called U.S. Programs 2015 to 2018 Strategy, Soros' Open Societies Foundation began funding radical operations in Arizona and Georgia in 2015 with the goal of subverting the 2020 presidential elections. Through massive campaign contributions and nonprofit funding, Soros owns and controls countless public officials, university professors, teachers unions, mayors, district attorneys, judges, congressmen, senators, secretaries of state, sheriffs, governors, and electronic voting machine companies around the world. In 2010, George Soros shocked even his most devout loyalists when he declared that China has a better functioning government than the United States. While the Chinese people should be considered friends and allies, the Chinese Communist Party is anything but. The CCP has been plotting to take over the United States for the better part of this last century, and their unconventional warfare principles are barely recognizable to the U.S. population.
America's top intelligence official even went so far as to say, and I quote, "If I could communicate one thing to the American people from this unique vantage point, it is that the People's Republic of China poses the greatest threat to democracy and freedom worldwide since World War II."
While we were sleeping, their poisonous seeds planted long ago have taken root and are now in full bloom within U.S. soil. The Chinese government and their operatives are buying up the United States at an alarming rate. Through cover organizations and individuals, they're purchasing American farms and businesses in mass volume. In addition, the CCP has co-opted the U.S. entertainment industry. Chinese firms own several major U.S. entertainment companies and control more than 8,000 American theater screens. Hollywood movie scripts are often reviewed and censored if they pose any threat to the image of the Chinese Communist Party. And many professional sports teams and players are controlled in great part by the CCP.
The pandemic sped up a trend that was already years in the making, and it's brought about another change: the Chinese government's growing influence over the content of these films. That has people worried, including members of Congress, as they point to a growing list of examples of Hollywood seemingly bending to China's will.
Now, here's a case in point. If you're a Hollywood actor, whatever you do, don't call Taiwan a country. Here's WWE star John Cena apologizing for doing just that.
我很抱歉对我的错误，对不起，我很抱歉。你必须了解，我很爱、很尊重中国跟中国人。
And that's the fear now, because you're now making movies for 16-year-olds and China. And that's it.
LeBron James taking on Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey, whose tweet supporting protests in Hong Kong set off a firestorm between the country and the league.
China announcing this morning they're pulling NBA games from their airwaves.
I don't want to get into a feud with Daryl, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand. Just be careful what we tweet and we say.
Why would the NBA take $500 million plus from a country that is engaging in ethnic cleansing?
They are a customer of ours, and guess what, Megan? I'm okay with doing business with China.
One of the stark realities of this past year is the clear and present threat that China represents to the United States of America and to the daily lives of Americans. And it's not just about exporting a pandemic. China has also potentially compromised Joe Biden's family.
Joe Biden, while he was vice president, took billions of dollars in bribes from the Chinese government in the form of payments to his son Hunter's businesses. In exchange, Biden was soft on Chinese military and economic aggression.
This is the reason why I've held the view for so many years and continue to hold the view that a rising China is a positive development. They're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not a competition for us. Yeah, I think that the biggest competitor is China.
Joe Biden had a bit to say today, suggesting that China wants to own America by 2035.
They literally have a stated goal of toppling America as the world superpower. How on earth could Joe Biden, with a straight face, negotiate with a government who's put billions of dollars into his family's businesses?
And finally, new rule, you're not going to win the battle for the 21st century if you are a silly people. And Americans are a silly people. Half the country is having a never-ending woke competition deciding whether Mr. Potato Head has a Don't tickle me. We are a silly people. Do you know who doesn't care that there's a stereotype of a Chinese man in a Dr. Seuss book? China. You think China's doing that? Letting political correctness get in the way of nurturing their best and brightest? You think Chinese colleges are offering courses in the philosophy of Star Trek, the sociology of Seinfeld, and surviving the coming zombie apocalypse? Those are real. And so is China, and they are eating our lunch.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. Last night, I was on the phone for 2 straight hours with Xi Jinping. And, you know, if we don't get moving, they're gonna eat our lunch. When he called to congratulate him, we had a 2-hour discussion. He's deadly earnest about becoming the most significant, consequential nation in the world.
China is currently making big moves to gain control of U.S. port facility operations and already controls the Panama Canal. They're building 5G networks throughout Europe and the West, which can be used to feed personal information and sensitive data directly to the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese government uses commercial software and apps to spy on U.S. citizens and extract their private information.
The CCP doesn't ask them for information. They don't need to. They have access to the information.
There seems to be a great disconnect. I mean, the American people, at least the kids who are on TikTok, have no concern about what we're talking about here.
Their ignorance of the threat does nothing to diminish it.
It's estimated that at least 80% of American adults have had their private information harvested by China. Big Pharma has exported the vast majority of their production to China. Currently, 97% of antibiotics in the U.S. come from China. 30% of personal protective equipment, such as face masks, come from China. 80% of U.S. imports of rare earth minerals come from China, which are vital for smartphones, electric cars, defense, and other technologies. In 2017, the U.S. produced 0 rare earth minerals. China, on the other hand, accounted for more than 80% of the world's supply. In lockstep with the Mexican drug cartels, 97% of fentanyl, one of the most addictive and deadly drugs is smuggled into the U.S. from China. People's Liberation Army hackers are executing unconstrained penetration, surveillance, theft, and offensive cyber attacks on U.S. businesses, critical infrastructure, intelligence apparatus, and yes, even the U.S. election system. To ignore this message is to surrender to a government takeover that will gravely affect the lives of every man, woman, and child of every class, culture, and nation. Our goal is to reach and revive the heart of humanity while there's still time. This